BigCountryPreps.com. I'm Evan Wren, and this is the Countdown to Two-A-Days series, our daily look at an area football team and the key questions we'll be answering about that team on our August 20th preseason preview here at Big Country Preps. I'm with my partner, Dan Youngblood, via Zoom. And Dan, tonight we are talking about the Merkel Badgers.
Yeah, and this is a Merkel program that, I mean, there's just no other way to put this. Had a rough go of it last year in an 0-10 season in Coach Westwood's first year. I think they knew it was going to be a tough year, particularly when you look at the non-district schedule they had lined up for them with a young team.
That schedule was insane.
Yeah, it was
Let's call a
absolutely
spade a spade. It
Yeah,
was insane.
absolutely brutal, absolutely brutal. Uh, but they did survive it. They had a couple of competitive games in district at the end, gave themselves a chance to make the playoffs with tight games against San Angelo, Grape Creek, and Stanton, but ultimately did go winless. But they've got some experience back from that team. 15 of their 23 Letterman return, including 7 offensive and 7 defensive starters. So some experience there. Still some young players in key spots, but. It should be a little bit of a brighter outlook for Merkel. We'll talk a little bit about some of the biggest questions they're going to face and some of the biggest challenges they're going to face here in just a little bit. But yeah, they're coming off a rough one, and they'll be looking to see if they can take strides in Coach Wood's second year.
All right, before we start talking about Merkel, we need to remind you folks to please hit the subscribe button at YouTube. It's free. And then also hit that little bell, and you'll receive notifications each and every time the Big Country Preps comes up with a video and puts it on YouTube. With that, Dan Youngblood, some of the key questions that we've got about Merkel, go ahead and fire away first.
I think the first one, and I kind of touched on this at the beginning, is how big of a step forward and how much growth will we see from last year now that they have a year in Coach Wood's system. Obviously, that was a young team with a new coach. It was a tough schedule. There were a lot of things working against the Badgers last year, but they didn't. They never stopped fighting. They continued to compete for Coach Wood. Now, I'm just interested to see this year with that year of experience, with more of a knowledge base of what they're trying to accomplish, with some guys who have had some experience, if maybe they can take that step forward and get back to the playoffs. The great thing about the Merkel situation is you only need one win in district to get to the playoffs. So they've been able to lighten up their non-district load a little bit, which I think was huge. They've got a non-district schedule that's much better for the team they've got. So the revamped schedule helps them there. They've got kids with experience, and at this point, like I said, just getting into the playoffs would be a big boost for this program, and it's not out of the realm of possibility either. So I'm interested just to see if we can just what kind of improvement we're going to see in year two, because usually you do get a jump as these kids get more familiar with what their coaches are trying to do and are coaching them, and that extra year of experience, while tough and full of growing pains last year, will hopefully have made a difference for them.
My question would be how much confidence and how much health can they carry out of that non-district portion? I look at the non-district portion of their schedule is actually very important for Merkel. They need to get out of it healthy because they don't have a ton of depth
Mhm.
at Merkel. They need to get out of it with their talent intact, and then they need to build up a little bit of confidence, knowing that if they win, I mean, one game, and there's a couple of games in district that I think are going to be that are in the winnable range for them. One win, and guess what? Merkel's in postseason play.
Mhm.
So, but they've got to have, they've got to have it upstairs that, hey, we can do this. And then, of course, you don't want everybody sitting in the medical tent when district rolls around. So then that's a matter of luck. What hand will luck deal them as far as injuries are concerned? I think that's the big key for Merkel if they want to see the playoffs.
Yeah, depth will definitely be an issue because they've had some young kids struggle on JV last year that they'll be relying on for that depth as well. So, depth will definitely be a key, and that kind of leads to the last question I have, because this is going to be just health and depth are going to be incredibly important here, and that's on the lines. They lost a couple of starting offensive and defensive linemen from last year's team. Don't have a whole lot of big bodies there. Don't have really any depth on that line. So they're going to need the guys they have to stay healthy. They're going to need the kids that are assuming those new roles uh, to step into those and contribute early. The thing about Merkel this year is they have some weapons. They've got a couple of sophomore kids very talented, and we saw this on the baseball field. And Easton Malone and Mason Prieto, who were both kids that showed up on our Rising Stars team on the baseball field. Very good athletes. Malone is a quarterback. Prieto's a receiver. And they've got some senior in Caden Blueball, who's a really nice receiver as well. They've got some weapons at the skill positions, but the lines are going to be key. They've got to get those kids up to speed quickly, and those guys got to stay healthy if they're going to have the type of enough success to maybe make the playoffs. Because I think that should be the goal for Merkel this year is just find a way to get into the playoffs. It doesn't matter what your record is at the end of the season. If you can find a way into the postseason, that's a huge not just accomplishment but also boost going forward for this program. So we'll see if they can. The offensive and defensive lines are going to be key.
Right. We're going to be taking a closer look at Merkel's schedule for 2025. But before we do that, we need to thank a few of our sponsors. Beginning with For the Love of the Game Broadcasting and our old friend Terry Slavens, owner of K-Lakes 93.5 FM out of Brackenridge, 97.7 FM KATX out of Eastland, Classic Country AM 1330 out of Graham, 94.7 FM KWKQ out of Graham, KROO 1430 AM out of Bracken, KWBY 98.5 FM out of Ranger. That is For the Love of the Game Broadcasting. Also, Rob Durham, sales consultant at Bayer Chevrolet Buick Cadillac up in Breckenridge. If you're in the market for a new vehicle or a used vehicle, call Rob. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever want to meet. Give him a shout at 254 559 2266. That's Rob Durham up at Bayer Chevrolet Buick Cadillac in Breckenridge. And finally, Cavalry Resources and Construction, located up in Breckenridge, serving the entire big country, offering custom standing seam roofing made on location and all commercial roofing applications. Give Kobe Walker a shout at 254 246 5546. That is Cavalry Resources and Construction in Breckenridge. And with that, Dan, it's time to take a look at the schedule for Merkel in 2025. They're in a five-team district, so that means only four district games, six non-district games. And we were just talking about how important this non-district portion will be for Merkel, both in terms of confidence and getting out of it healthy. We'll start with the non-district portion. They will open up on August 29th at Ballinger. Home dates against Bangs and Holly and Cross Plains will follow on the 5th, the 12th, and 19th, respectively. Then they will have two road dates, September 26th at San Angelo TLCA, and then they will close with Brownfield on the road on October 3rd. And then they will face, well, then they jump into district, but it just sounds odd with these bigger districts. A non-district game on October the 3rd. That just
Yeah.
sounds odd.
Yeah, well, most of our districts will be open that date as they get ready for their district push. But starting district in Merkel's case with a really tough game right off the bat at Wall. That one's going to be rough. Then they have their open date on the 17th of October, and then host Stanton for a big one on October 24th before going to San Angelo Grape Creek on October 31st, and then they wrap up their district schedule with another toughie at home against Cahoma on the 7th of November. So this is an interesting district. We talked about their non-district schedule. All three of those final opponents were swapped out for this year to kind of lessen their load in non-district. I think that was a good thing for them. Once you get to district, it's interesting because this is a really top-heavy league. You've got Wall and Cahoma there at the top, and at the bottom, you've got opportunities. I think for Merkel to be competitive and maybe get a win or two. And if you do, you're in the playoffs, and that'd be a big deal.
Right. Game of the year. I see two of them. How do you see it?
We probably see the same ones. That Stanton game at home on the 24th, followed by Grape Creek on the road on Halloween. And the great thing is those are two huge games for them. And these, again, I mentioned this earlier, those were competitive games last year. That Grape Creek game was a 14-12 game that Merkel very easily could have won. And then I think the Stanton game was an 8-point game. So you're talking about one-score games right there. And Merkel should be improved. So you would expect them to have an opportunity to be competitive again this year. And the great thing about those two games, in my opinion, is they follow an open date. You have to start with that game against Wall. You have to survive that
Yes.
game. That's going to be a really tough one. Survive that game, but you get a week after that to heal up from any bumps and bruises you get from that Wall game to get your mindset back right, and you got your 2-game season right there. Stanton, Grape Creek. You win one of those games, you're in the playoffs. You win both of them, you're definitely in. So that's a big deal.
You've got 7 games to open the season, one of them being a district game, but you've got 7 games to prep for those 2 games, that miniature season, that Stanton and Grape Creek game on the 24th and 31st of October. And you have an open date there just before them. It's perfect. It's a perfect setup for a very young team with not a whole lot of depth. So you've got, you can go on there mentally prepped and rested to get one win,
Yeah.
one win out of those two games, and boom, you're a playoff team.
And if you get both those wins by chance, you go into that Kahoma game with nothing to lose. You are playing with house money, and you just play the best game you can. And I mean, whatever happens, happens. But you kind of become a trap game for Kahoma at that point, potentially, if you win both of those games. But of course, that's going to be a tall order. But this Merkel team will have more experience. They're in a system they're more familiar with. It's going to be exciting just to see what kind of improvement they make. And one thing about a Westwood program, there's going to be enthusiasm. You know those kids are going to compete. So I'm interested to see what kind of step forward they can take here in year two.
All right, and with that, it's about time to wrap up this edition of the Countdown to Two-A-Days, the Merkel Badgers. But before we do that, we want to remind you that August 20th is the big day here at BigCountryPreps.com. That's the day we release our preseason preview with previews of all the teams in the Big Country that we cover, including a few on the outer edge of the Big Country. We'll have more than 40 player features. We'll have opinion pieces. We'll have predictions, stats, standings, you name it. We're going to have everything in a preview that you're going to want. It's the most in-depth look at Big Country football of any media source, either in the Big Country or across the state. Don't forget to join us on August 20th.
In the meantime, thank you for joining us for this episode of our Countdown to Two-A-Days series. And make sure you come back tomorrow when we take a look at the Wall Hawks here at BigCountryPreps.com.